Hey everyone, today's DeFi Drop features Alex, the CEO and founder of Fensory, the super app for crypto wealth. Welcome, Alex. It's great to have you on, finally.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Cool. And also, I believe you're chatting with John, our BD at Portals as well, aren't you, for
Exactly.
integration with
Exactly.
Portals? That's cool.
Amazing team. Amazing team. Amazing solution.
Thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to that kicking off. Anyway, yeah, it's great to have you on. I don't want to hang around with the small talk because we've been doing that before we hit record. But what we've left aside, which I still haven't got, is all your information about yourself and what your background is and how you actually started Fensory and why. So perhaps you can give us a bit of those details and as well the problem that you're trying to solve with Fensory.
For sure. For sure. Look, I mean, for the past 4 years, I've been heavily invested in crypto native capital markets. I previously led a BD and sales globally for a agency lender based in Zurich called Celeste. Worked with around 150 crypto native institutions. At core, the original concept was to build, effective money markets for institutional counterparties. And then post FTX, realization hit that doesn't necessarily work in a needless fashion, given that we're looking at a very nascent ecosystem with no existing credit risk ratings, let alone audited financials at that point. So we started to provide agency services, white glove services to large LPs in the space. Typically, those LPs would hold a couple $100 million worth of crypto, primarily Bitcoin and stablecoins natively on balance sheet, and we're looking for risk-adjusted returns. So over the course of, I'd say, 2 years, we've, worked with those institutions on a day-to-day basis, analyzed their mandate, their goals, built treasury frameworks, risk frameworks, source the counterparties, help them to deploy, unsecured credit, secure credit, structured credit. We've built intraday credit facilities, to manage duration risk. So we were funding a lot of DTF create transactions. We deployed into hedge funds and all of this at scale. So my book of clients over the course of my, stint at Celeste, we've deployed about $1 billion worth of Bitcoin and stable coins. So the topic of, I'd say, risk adjusted in-kind returns was top of my mind for a while. Left the company in October of 2024. Wanted to take a breather, spend some time with the kids. And what really happened, specifically post-election, was that a lot of my old clients, both issuers and LPs, kept bringing me simple and I'd say more complex questions. But it sort of, I guess, like the common denominator was, hey, we're seeing solution X and Y, but we don't necessarily know how to benchmark it. Hey, hedge fund XY just pitched us a Bitcoin native, strategy. How do they compare? And to me, I'd say discovery to that point in time wasn't necessarily top of mind because we had a reputation in the market that we could deploy at scale. So most of the deals that we would see, we would get inbound. Because again, we've worked with 150 institutions. Whenever there was something interesting in the market, we were one of the first you would call. But I realized in that very moment that if you take away that sort of super specialized intermediary, then LPs are entirely left on their own, especially if maybe you aren't part of that, mystic cycle of a couple hundred institutions that work in crypto. And so it triggered a bit of a research exercise in me where I wanted to better understand if I have, say, Google, right? And my maybe limited personnel networks, how I actually discover solutions that fit into my mandate. Long story short, came to the conclusion, very, very hard. So got myself a Replit Pro, built a functional pilot version with the idea in mind that we could effectively index the global investments opportunities landscape. And went back to my old clients, got the sell side on board, a number of great issuers, got 60 allocators on board, ran a pilot for about 4 months, and then to my surprising inbound came in. People started calling me, wanted to get onto the application, and then in about was probably July, one of the hedge funds turned around and said, "Hey, can we become a premium subscriber?" One, we're interested in getting additional visibility, but second, we'd be very keen on getting a better understanding of user intent for underlying product design. At that point, I had no terms of and conditions. I had no entity. And so I was like, well, it's about time we turn this into a proper business. And that effectively is the origin story of Fensory. What we are doing at Fensory is we are aggregating the global investment universe, addressable solutions that are crypto denominated, with the sole intent to effectively become the single sign-on, the super app for crypto wealth that allows professional, I'd say advanced retail, all the way to smaller institutions that have crypto balance sheet, interact with this ecosystem in a mindful way.
Wow, thanks for that background and what Fensory is all about. That's very, very helpful. You support like SMAs, DeFi vaults, CeDeFi, RWAs, all these structured products, and all in one neutral, non-custodial platform, which is pretty cool. And also, I love that you properly bootstrapped this at the beginning. You did the good thing and went out there and found the demand, found a real solution to a real problem. And then you found yourself in that position of, oh my gosh, we better create a company.
It's a third company I'm building. I'm building 0 to 1. I'm a big believer in lean startup, and I guess AI is allowing us to prototype quickly, and not prototype as in the old days, spinning up a Figma prototype at the very end of the day. And I'm not an engineer. Obviously, we have a CTO today, but I'm not an engineer. But at the end of the pilot exercise, I had about 16 APIs integrated with actual cron jobs, real time data. And I think it's the beauty of AI, to be in a position to validate ideas and concepts quickly. Although I do have to say that, looking at the current crypto Twitter X timeline, I think expectations are still a little bit off at times as to how far AI is getting you. But that's a topic for another day, I guess.
Okay. And what was behind the switch? You had a different brand when you launched initially, Amber Markets. How come you switched? Was it just an instinctive thing? Sorry, guys, we had a bit of a technical issue there, so we've had a bit of a break, but we're back now. I'll go back to where we were. Alex was telling us about the rebrand, which they've just done. Fensory, it was Amber Markets initially, rebranded to Fensory. But there's also another point I'd love Alex to touch on as well, which is the positioning as an operating system for crypto capital markets. So what triggered the pivot? And let's chat a bit more about the operating system.
It's somewhat of a boring story. When I started the initial pilot phase, I had the understanding that this is a pilot, that we will scrap the version that I'm currently building, and that is for the sole purpose of validating our core hypothesis. Amber Markets I had laying around in my GoDaddy account, opted in for Amber Markets. At the same time, crypto has an oversaturation of Amber brands, and so when we conclude a pilot, we effectively sat down, ideated around naming and the ultimate goal, which is mass adoption, making sure that crypto becomes, broadly speaking, more accessible and somewhat, de-nerdifying the space. Hence, it was important for us that we opt in for a brand that feels more like fintech, less than deep tech. And I was of the opinion that a .com brand that is memorable would make sense, hence Fensory.com. Now, for the operating side, the operating system side, we effectively are currently in what I would call the super app phase, which means that we are building the single sign-on terminal that, hopefully in a few months from now, will be in a position where users don't have a necessity to ever leave the platform. So that is our, I'd say, front end journey. But while we are rolling this out and while we are getting adoption onto the platform, this really means that, at the core, we are building a massive liquidity aggregator and ecosystem. And so I think the end game for us is truly to be the operating system where not only users effectively do discovery, but where liquidity, broadly speaking, also resides.
That's really cool. And you're starting with BTC and stablecoins initially, right?
So we do cover everything, but and I think, you've picked up the Bitcoin and stablecoin part from the website. I think it has a bit of an SEO purpose there. Generally speaking, I think people overestimate the, I'd say, transactional dominance of altcoins when it comes to investment products and solutions.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, if you look at pure notionals, then it's stablecoins, it's Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. And so at the very end of the day, we are primarily targeting investors that do hold Bitcoin, stablecoins, and then again, Solana, ETH. But naturally speaking, we cover pretty much everything that's relevant out there and addressable.
Let's take a look at the workflow then. If you could walk us through that. Let's say I arrive with a mandate, duration, jurisdiction, liquidity needs, risk, limits, all of that. How does Fensory take me from discovery to shortlist due diligence?
Right. I think there is a number of routes that you could possibly take. So we do support, if somebody is hugely into clicking, they can obviously do this on the terminal. I think ultimately, and this is where we take I'd say a very different approach than a lot of the platforms out there. And I have a very strong belief there. So if I'm in TradFi, and I'm trying, as an issuer, selling something to a TradFi firm, or if I'm representing a TradFi LP, then the way it effectively works is you have a portfolio, and within the portfolio, you have different mandates. So looking at private credit, the private credit mandate could be, we are investing into receivables financing with underlying insurance, 5 years track record on the issuer, at say 9 to 15% per annum. The same thing works for bonds, right? We do invest into investment grade bonds in the North American region, industries XYZ. That's effectively how you would use Bloomberg today. Now that doesn't work in crypto at all. And so what we are introducing from launch is effectively mandate-based views, which means before you actually do start the terminal, you will effectively choose and pick your mandate. And on the back of that specific mandate, you get a completely catered view of the opportunity set. For certain ICPs, more on the retail and the savings end, you will also get a completely catered UI that is effectively digestible. So if you think about a retail allocator, then at the end of the day, your mandate is to invest into products that have relatively favorable liquidity, high liquidity, ideally reserve attestations, existing risk ratings, audits. And so we would effectively, I wouldn't say we're not a curator, but on the back of your mandate, we curate an initial set of opportunities that effectively we deem favorable for you. Same thing on a family office, right? A family office that has a mandate to invest into products that are permissioned only and that have a minimum assigned rating. You should be in a position to effectively find products that fit your mandate. Now, obviously, again, if you want to get the full opportunity set, you will be in a position to get the full opportunity set. But the mandates are terribly and extremely important to improve the UI, or better say the UX, for allocators that are entering the space. And then I think third, we do support natural language search, which we think is extremely beneficial. So think about a query, show me 5 curated vaults with delta neutral underlying that have a inbuilt insurance policy for smart contract risks, right? So the issue, from my perspective, also speaking to a lot of users and institutions, is that it is extremely hard to navigate and filter for relevance in this market. And so either you're completely lost navigating different portals and websites, or you effectively, again, have inbound requests or pitches, and end up, favoring the loudest solutions over the best solutions.
I'm just on the platform now, playing with the little demo that you have on the hero section of your homepage. I was playing with it a bit last week as well when I was prepping for this. It's just super cool. It's super slick, so easy. There's so much going on under the hood, and I guess it's just the beginning, and
Yeah.
you've got a lot more to come. I just click here, like top Solana products, find products, bam. I'm hit with like 5 great research tools.
Right.
And then I can click here, I can go analyze with AI, and I'm in. And then I can start talking to the AI about this particular position and this strategy. It's fantastic. I mean, it's great. It serves a great point. But I was going to ask something else while I'm on this topic, and following on from what you just said. Markets are super fragmented, and there's no shared standard, let's say, and you're building benchmarks across risk and performance and liquidity. But how do you define risk consistently then across, say, a
Right.
DeFi vault versus a CeDeFi product versus a fund?
Right. I think, and it's a bit of a delicate topic that, we're having discussions internally frequently. At the very end of the day, we have to make sure that we remain neutral at core. So we should never be, in favor of product A versus product B. Now, what we do, which I think is tremendously important as well, is we work with the existing third-party credit risk rating agencies. That is twofold interesting. One is it allows you to effectively query specifically for risk-rated products while we remain neutral at core. Also, I have a core belief that, risk ratings in itself is a extremely complex task. So I don't think that a platform that has the intent of providing, broad access to solutions in the ecosystem has the capabilities to do the ratings itself. But second is, I think it's the right way going about the super app approach, which is we wanna unify the ecosystem. We take a very collaborative approach. There are extremely good companies out there that unfortunately do struggle with, broader distribution. And so our moat at the very end of the day, again, is to be the single sign-on, the platform that you never leave. It's not necessarily building IP around risk ratings. And so we heavily utilize and rely on amazing companies that have built amazing infrastructure, including portals, right?
And those partnerships have been cemented in your previous career as well. I guess you're bringing through a huge amount of experience into Fensory. This is your third startup. I guess you've worked with all these big players before. So there's huge trust there. There's track record. Also, I'm checking again on my little search here that I've done. It's come up with 4 prompts. I've got these. I can just click them. I don't even need to type. What drives the yield in this product? What are the liquidity constraints? How's the performance changed recently? And the final one here, which I can just click on, which is what are the primary risk factors, right? So you're addressing that issue for every strategy, every position, for the user to DYOR.
And I do have to say that it is quite literally a preview.
Yes, of course.
If and when we launch in March, users will get, access to the full opportunity set. The AIs effectively will be consuming metadata from third-party risk rating agencies. They are going to be consuming data from amazing providers such as Accountable on the reserve attestation end. We are looking at more complex modeling, whether that's Monte Carlo simulations on a per product level. Obviously, the AI is going to be integrated into portfolio. So it's going to be in a position to effectively optimize portfolio, send you notifications. If, you've invested into Athena, you want to get notified when Athena depegs, you want to set automated liquidation triggers. If Athena depegs, X standard deviation points, we're early in the journey.
Super early, but you're also not an issuer or a custodian. You're aggregating from trusted sources, like we've just mentioned, and standardizing. But what are your rules? Like, what gets listed, what gets flagged, what gets excluded?
Right. We right now are taking a very simplistic approach, at least for the sort of early launch process. So we heavily rely effectively on audits and third-party attestations for, I'd say, the approval process of products. We do already exclude, I'd say, products that currently show an anomaly. Example, product that typically yields 8%, spikes to 100%, we would automatically delist it from the venue. And then also for the time being, we are only listing products that have minimum TVL. We will, over the next couple of months, build a fairly sophisticated risk engine that is ultimately going to be feeding into the mandates. Again, we take an approach where we believe there is no one size fits all. And so at the very end of the day, whether a product is going to be showcased really depends on the ICP and your corresponding mandate. If you identify as a crypto degen, you might absolutely love those outlier situations. If it's a retail, retail participant or a family office, it's going to be way, way more stringent.
And those family offices, are they as big as you'll go?
You mean in terms of AUM, as big as they go?
Yeah.
Right. So we currently, when we are pushing to market, which is in a few weeks, we take 100%. We take a 100% PLG approach. So we don't necessarily offer a institutional only package, if you will. We are working with family offices and larger allocators, trying to figure out the best way to produce a infrastructure that is transactionable great for them. Now, I think in reality, and that is a bit of a trap in crypto, a lot of founders overestimate how easy it will be to work with larger institutions.
Okay.
In reality, a lot of the larger institutions in digital assets, they typically either build in-house solutions or rely heavily on third-party advisors and managers and curators. So I think for us, it's yet to be seen to what extent we are going to be structuring packages and offers specifically for family offices. What we've seen, though, is that from a data standpoint, so I was more referring to the actual transactional lifecycle. From a data standpoint, a lot of the family offices that have so far used terminals such as Messari, the requirements have changed, right? Family offices back in the day, if you'd look at somebody that is in charge of crypto at a family office, his typical day-to-day request by clients would be, hey, can you explain me Dogecoin? And so they would use Messari, for example, to inform themselves about certain coins. Now, reality speaking, you got ChatGPT and there's sort of broader access to, metadata around individual coins. So the more common request family offices are getting now from their clients is, hey, I do hold, X amount of Bitcoin. How can I deploy those Bitcoins into strategies? Is there a way for me to offset some of the custody costs, some of the tax burden? And so people in charge of family offices, they are effectively now tasked with finding addressable capital markets products.
Yeah.
And there we see a huge demand from family offices, specifically looking at not only CeDeFi or permission DeFi facilities, but also at RWAs and benchmarking RWAs.
You're purely on product-led growth, I'd say, and retail or smaller allocators for the time being, big-ish smaller allocators, let's say, for the time being. Back on the product side, you're previewing these AI search or analytic agents that I've just been talking about here that answer these natural language queries. What kinds of questions does it answer best today? I know it's super early. I get it super early. And where would you, in the future, or where do you intentionally force humans to do manual due diligence? Because I guess you have to force some of that back on them.
Exactly. I think so. I think where I personally feel usability is going to be great is actually finding products, because again, there's thousands of products, there's an individual mandate, and it's extremely hard to find the products that actually fit your requirements on current systems. So I think natural language search is something that we focus on, improving the outputs, improving the granularity, improving sort of the scope of the queries to include, certain risk metrics, volatility metrics, etc. Then I think second, nobody should be making a full-on investment decision when using a analytics agent. But in reality, let's take a simple example. There is an insurance policy available for a specific product, or there is a smart contract audit, available for a certain product. I think where this is going to be most helpful is for people to effectively get summaries and get individual insights out of the sort of ocean of metadata available per individual product. So if you think Aave issuing a insurance policy for the Aave app, how do you even figure out for what exactly it covers, right? It sounds great, 250K million, right, per user. But if it only ever covers for, say, smart contracts, then it doesn't necessarily resolve the concerns that you have with a specific product. And so the way I would want to see it is it being effectively your own personal advisor and researcher, if you will. And it should be in a position to either give you a simplified understanding of what you look at, or if you have a more complex requirement, getting to the key and core findings quicker. And by quicker, I mean going from 5 hours of reading to 2 minutes.
That's amazing. Like a contextual explainer that
Yeah.
surfaces these critical details without overwhelming the user, but also putting the ball back in their court. Man, it's scary where we're going right now. Hey, the capabilities of this technology, but it's also cool. It's really cool. And I think we're going to see a lot of good come from it.
It's and to me personally, it's like an ongoing thought that I think will come true. We're early, we're taking a lean approach. Ultimately, the market will tell us what we should be building. I don't exclude an option for us as Fensory in a year, 2 years from now, where the primary experience is effectively you having a conversation with a voice agent, and the voice agent effectively providing a ready to deploy portfolio. And so we're going from a terminal with millions of data points to an experience, at least used by most users, that again is effectively a chat window and a output that is transactionable.
It's still going to remain that structure. So we can still build around that structure, let's say. I do want to touch a bit more on the moat because when amazing products like yours pop up, so do others.
Right now, from a builder standpoint, I think, our moat is that effectively we're not issuing products. We are extremely collaborative. We are extremely fast moving with a very lean team of highly experienced people. Now, if you ask me, what is your moat? I'd flip it and I would say, if in 12 months I go on Reddit, I go on X, and people are effectively talking about Fensory, and they are saying, I don't actually ever leave Fensory, then I'm going to be extremely proud. And I think that ultimately is going to be our moat, which is that it's a one-stop shop. You don't have to ever leave. I had this discussion just, a few days ago. We will be covering RWAs. And so the question really is, well, how do you roll out a RWA platform, right? And my argument is that at the very end of the day for us, it is worthwhile to double down and push tremendously if we have secondary liquidity, because that closes the loop. As long as in crypto, we're building systems that aren't closed loop, if you will, that don't cover the full life cycle, churn is always going to be high. And so at the very end of the day, what I'm trying to achieve here is build something that is comparable to Robinhood or Interactive Brokers or Schwab, where I, with my US dollar wealth, can sign on and I don't ever have to leave, right? I might use a ticker on the side. I might read some news, but from a transactional life cycle standpoint, there is no necessity for me to ever move away, because I can buy, I can analyze, I can manage my portfolio, and I can sell the assets. I get notifications in there, and I would argue that is our moat.
Would you ever allow Fensory to be integrated on other platforms, or would you want users just landing on Fensory and building that household wealth brand?
I think for us, we want to focus on distribution and general usability. So I don't necessarily want to build an API business. And again, like, we love working with portals. You know, it's not a market that we necessarily want to be focusing on. Now, what we've seen is a interest from advisors and sub-advisors that actually have family office clients, for example, or financial institution that want to get their clients access to those products, right? We see an opportunity for us effectively becoming a white label, a single sign-on solution within a B2B2C, B2B2B model. So that's definitely something that we will be looking at, and where we have active conversations with institutions.
That's really cool. Right, Alex, I've enjoyed talking with you. We're certainly going to enjoy our relationship working with you guys as well when that kicks off soon. We always end these podcasts with one question, which is a bit of a game. It was quite funny doing it in 2025 because 10/10 happened, which wasn't funny. And then November 27 or whatever it was happened, 20th, I can't remember. And the question is, today, DeFi TVL sits at around 120 billion, as per DeFi Llama. What do you predict this number will be on the 21st of June, 2026? Okay, that's one. And also the 31st of December, 2026, right? So we're going by the solstice this time, the summer solstice. It will be the first, and then New Year's Eve.
Okay, so you're asking the 21st of June, which by coincidence is my birthday, and then you want to hear my prediction for end of year?
Exactly.
So I think in June, I think we've recovered to peak of 2025. I don't know the number top of my mind, but I think we've probably lost about 25%-ish, just top of my mind, since peak 25. So I think by summer we have recovered, and then I think by end of year next year, it's a good question. I think we will probably, from peak of 2025, see an additional probably 25-50% increase. I do think summer onwards is going to be extremely interesting.
So 21st of June, you're saying around, I think it was 173 billion or 174 billion, I think, was peak 2025. So we'll pick a number. You can pick a number, 174 maybe?
Yeah, I'd say 172.
172.
And then I guess by end of year, we're probably going to be in the 215-ish.
215, right. You're down. You're in the game. Wow, that would be a great birthday present, wouldn't it? Unlimited cool points from portals on the 21st of June if you get this.
Would love that. Would love that.
Nice one. Alex, it's been great chatting. We'll chat a lot more in the future, and we'll get you back on when you're all launched and running and growing.
Would love that. Thanks so much, Ed.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks.